Hi, global family. This is Heather Lockett with Lasting Conversations. And once again, we are with the amazing Jill Karlin Butler. Hi, Jill.
Hi. Thank you for having me again.
So listen, we just, we know we could probably have 12 episodes because each of her we're having fun. And each of her storylines can just go into the heart of so many amazing things. So last time that we were together, you ended in India.
Right.
And that you were having a calling to come back to the States. So what Jill is, she's a visionary, an artist, a yogi. She's a master gardener. And her passion that we're focusing on mostly for this particular show, number 57, is in ecotecture, which gets into the gardening and sustainable living and your visions for our future. Mm-hmm. So welcome back, Jill.
Thank you.
Thank you. So let's go back to that you had been in India was that your third trip?
It was.
It had been your third trip, and then you heard this calling, go back to the States.
I did.
So take us there.
So I came back to my home in Flamingo Park, West Palm Beach, Florida, and I was active in my neighborhood association, but I also had received a commission from the city of West Palm Beach to do the portraits of houses that I was showing you in the last episode, to do a calendar of 12 different historic buildings and to highlight the history of these 12 buildings. And the first building that I went to work on was the Armory. And it's now the Art Armory.
Right, the Armory Art Center.
The Armory Art Center.
Right.
At the time, it wasn't quite that. It was a sort of old building that could have been torn down. And it was still an art center, but it was not nearly as robust as it is today. Uh-huh. And so I sat in front of the tree and I did this painting. And as I was doing the painting, the director came out and he told me that they were going to cut down the tree the following day.
Oh my goodness.
And I mean, I wasn't painting the tree. I was painting a picture of the building, but the tree was in the painting. And somehow it just overwhelmed me. And it was like the tree was talking to me. And so I went home. I was very upset about it all. And I called this lady that I knew who's the head of Audubon. And she lived in my neighborhood. And she was very activist, environmentalist. At the time, I didn't know too much about this stuff. And so I asked her what to do, and she said she had had tooth surgery that day and she couldn't help me. But she did know that the neighborhood had voted on the new landscape plan that this guy had, landscape architect Jim Smith, had proposed. And she was kind of disgusted by the whole thing. But she was like, there's nothing I can do to help you. And I said, well, what do I do? And she said, well, tie yourself up to the tree because they're doing that in California. And she may have just been joking, but I ended up doing that.
Did you really?
Yeah. And so what happened and how that evolved was that just a few weeks earlier, I had met Lee Butler at an art opening, and we, at the Carefree Theater, amazingly enough.
Oh, the Carefree.
Yeah,
R.I.P. Yeah, I remember the Carefree.
And so he showed me his work, and I was, again, like godsmacked by his brilliance. And he was the father of environmental architecture. He had invented a way to heat and cool buildings without using fossil fuels in the 1970s. And to me, I just couldn't imagine why they weren't everywhere. Why are these buildings not everywhere? They're beautiful. They're just exquisite buildings, and they're absolutely brilliant. And so we had dated just a bit, and I went to the following morning. They were going to cut the tree down at 7 a.m. And so I got a plan together and figured out how I could do this. And I rode my bike to the Armory, and I got myself ready to tie my bike chain around the girth of the tree, to tie myself with handcuffs to this tree. And the girth of the tree was so large, And the bike chain was one of those wrapped in plastic wire chains, and it kept rolling back on itself. So what I needed was another set of hands to pull it tight. So I rode my bike back home, and I called Lee Butler at 6 a.m, and I said, will you tie me to this tree at the armory?
And you had really just met?
Yeah, we had only met a few weeks earlier.
Oh, my goodness.
And so he was there within a heartbeat. He was like, yeah, I'll be there right away. And so our love story ensued. And the tree survived for a little while, but then the forces that be had it chopped down eventually as well. So that's our love story. That's the beginning of our love story. And that I depicted in this painting, which is this sort of iconic painting of the benefit of trees for our society and for our humanity and for our earth. And I call it plant, nurture, and protect trees. And then I give all the reasons why, all the wonderful things that they do. And I've organized protests for saving trees with nursery school students, actually, so that I could teach them about the benefits of planting trees. And I had an organization, a nonprofit organization called Tree Florida, in which we planted trees all over South Florida. We had a really great board of directors, and what the board of directors, were many of them were had landscaping companies that you would know of down here in South Florida, and some would donate trees. We got a bunch of trees when the what's it called, the MacArthur Foundation, when the MacArthur land was given up somehow. We got all the trees from then, and I planted a meditation garden up at the IZ campus on PGA. So there's a meditation garden I planted in like 1992, I think, and with the Tree Florida and with a teacher from the university, from FAU. And so there are a lot of gardening projects that I've been involved in, including being the vice president of Gray Mockingbird Community Garden and doing a hand-painted tile mural wall there, putting in a Zen garden with the help of their gratitude trainees, and putting in a veterans garden there. And so, raised garden beds and irrigation systems that are natural, and working on a permaculture garden, and which are things that I'm still trying and implementing wherever I am. And it's a big job, and it's a job that people are mostly turn a blind eye to. Like, I just recently moved to a 55 or older community, and they're married to grass growing, lawns growing. And I just spoke to the president yesterday, and I said, it's ridiculous. He was complaining about the water bill, and I said, it's unnecessary. You don't need to have a water bill. If you plant in a way in which you use natural Florida ground cover, you can eliminate the majority of your water bill and not ever have to use this very horrific stuff called Roundup, of which there's so many lawsuits right now.
Well, that's a rabbit hole about that. That gets into so many things for sure. Now, what I love is, and again, my show is always so very organic and it's unscripted, and we just roll and we go. And so when Jill came in to the studio, everything just sort of landed so beautifully. What we have here, she was gifting, here is some moringa for myself and then the folks here in the studio. And I said, oh my gosh, this is going to be perfect, because I just knew we were going to need more than one episode to cover so much ground. All pun intended, a lot of ground cover. Exactly. So we have these as beautiful plants, these moringa plants as props, that each of us get to bring home now. But tell us,
hopefully you will take care of.
Absolutely. So this is great, because this goes into what you were saying, and we'll sort of get into some of the philosophies and where I always liked rounding into the hope part. And I think our next generation right now, they're not having it with many don't want all the concrete and plain. And so we've been missing the green. And I know so many of us can start to feel physical atrophy, and people want to do their forest bathing. We talked with Kathy Andio on one of the episodes about the forest bathing, and the physical phytons and the physicality for our neurosenses that we need nature. And yet at the same time, and this is going to be now a question, as land is being developed, and we're in a city that once upon a time was a swamp, and all of us here, this was nothing but land. So building does happen. How can we marry and balance what is available and to be more sustainable and mindful than the typical concrete block where now there is no nature, the birds aren't singing, the ground is dried up, and we humans physically just don't feel very well. So this probably gets into you married Lee Butler, and the passion and love of your life. We'll get into your screenplay in a second, but he was a visionary. He was way ahead of his time, although the ecology, this was on the forefront of a lot of people in the 70s. So let's put all of this together in terms of where the work is now. And there are people who can hear it and hear what's possible. And people have grow trees in their house, or they're turning their front yards from suburbia grass into vegetable gardens. And so these are those pockets of hope, I think, in terms of the conversation. So tell us about more of your journey with Lee and the ecotecture, and really where we really can be headed right now.
So thank you. I am committed to getting these buildings built. And these buildings, I will give you in a nutshell what they do. So they're 100% self-sustainable. They take care of all of their own lights, gas, water, waste management, and food production.
Food production. Because it's the cycle of everything.
They have an interior greenhouse that produces all the food you could need. And he started that back in the 70s with a house like the house where he invented the envelope, the gravity geothermal envelope, and then went on to build these. He would never build a house like this again, he said, after 1985, because he would never build anything with the right angle. However, if you look at these incredible houses, and if you were to design one today based on his 1970s findings, you would build a house that did not need any fossil fuels for heating or cooling. This house depicted here in Lake Tahoe has never had a utility bill for heating or cooling. This is since the 1970s.
What's the name of the book so people can?
I don't think you can. You might be able to get
it
on Amazon. I don't know. It's called Ekosea Homes. Right. Now, how he got the name?
Natural energy conserving design.
Yes.
So how to design natural energy conserving within a home.
Right.
Or other buildings.
Yes. But how he got the name was they had a friend who was a Greek sculptor, and the word ekosea from ancient Greece means the essence of being. And Lee said that the essence of being is family, food, and shelter. And that's what we're providing. So we evolved that because once a genius does his work, as Lee had done, he wants to carry on. What happened is in the 1950s, Buckminster Fuller, the great engineer who designed the geodesic dome at the Expo in Montreal and the geodesic domes everywhere, taught at the University of Illinois. And he taught his students that these scientists knew how much world resources, what the world resources were. And they put it into something called the world game. And no matter how the students played the world game, all the world's resources are used up. And this is in the 1950s. And Fuller taught his students that, yes, this was true. However, that there was something divine within the human being that would prevent that from happening. And Lee was a student of one of Bucky's students, but he was enamored and influenced by Buckminster Fuller beyond any other person, any teacher ever. As he said, beyond Jesus, beyond Buddha, beyond anyone, Bucky was Lee's teacher. And because he heard Buller's teaching, he felt it was incumbent upon him to find the solution to this problem. And that is exactly what he did with ecotecture. So the Ekosea Homes, the fossil fuel, getting rid of the fossil fuels for heating and cooling through the gravity geothermal envelope, his design, which is the brilliant design that the American Institute of Architects studied, the Department of Energy, the United States Department of Energy studied and discovered them to be the most energy efficient homes they had ever looked at, works by a very simple concept that a child understands, which is natural gravity geothermal convection. And what happens is you build the house, and he has a map in here of climatological zones, for example, throughout America, but these houses were built all over the world. And if you go to the permafrost level, below the permafrost level, which in each part of the world is at a different footage, so it could be 5 foot in New York, it could be 10 foot in somewhere else. And if you go to that and you tap in to the temperature there, it's constant. So all year long, winter, summer, spring, or fall, it is always exactly the same temperature. So let's say in New York it's 60 degrees, but let's say outdoors it's 30 degrees. So what Lee discovered is that through natural gravity geothermal convection, he made an envelope around the house, starting in the basement. See this air wall? This is a wall of air that envelops the home. And so he says the house thinks that it's underground. So couple that with a south-facing greenhouse in the climatological place like New York. Every house is different based on the site, based on where it is. You have to, in permaculture, before we start doing a garden, we stay on the site and we observe the site for, you're supposed to for a year, but most of us don't get to do all of that. But you observe the site and you observe everything about the site, when the birds fly over, and you make notes, when the children are dropped off from school, whatever it might be that happens at that site. And you have to do the same thing in designing a home like this in some cases. And so the house then thinks that it's underground. It thinks that it's 60 degrees instead of 30 degrees out. And you have a basically warm house if it's 30 degrees out. And then if you have a greenhouse, a south-facing greenhouse, you can get that house up to 80 degrees. And you can control through fans, through vents, through a variety of things, how each room, the temperature in each room. And this is all through natural gravity geothermal convection, all through nature. All of Lee's processes utilize following nature, following photosynthesis, following absorption and convection and all of the gravity and all of the things that we observe in nature. And that's what he went on to design. And the brilliance of ecotecture is that it basically takes, this was, Lee was on the cover of Popular Science. I didn't know what I brought with me today, honestly. And on the cover of Popular Science magazine, which is no slouch, and was asked to speak where Sir Isaac Newton delivered the laws of gravity. But ecotecture, his final iteration, which is what I have been promoting for the last 30 years, is, this is theoretical, but basically it's a building that floats. So the first designs Lee got through a tree. A tree gave him the idea of, he asked the tree, why is it so easy for you and so difficult for mankind? You just stand there and all your resources come to you. And like a bolt of lightning, he got the design in his head and he drew it out because he had observed conditions in this house, in this 10,000 square foot house that he designed on property his dad left him in Meaden, Tennessee, in the middle of nowhere, an indoor swimming pool, maid's quarters, everything. And he was quite perplexed when an ice storm hit the house in January of the 60s, I think. And And it's been 2 years trying to figure out why that house was warm. It was his first passive solar design. And that's when that moment hit, when he asked the tree how it was possible. The newest designs that float, the information was given to him through dolphins, because Joan Ocean and her partner, Jean-Luc Bazuli, were in St. Augustine, where Lee had dropped out. It's a long story. It's too
but
long.
this is a really great segue, because one of the things we had tapped in with the previous episode is that you have a website called The Dolphin Dream.
Right.
So I love that, again, nature, we have the land and the earth and the dirt and the plants, and then we have water, as which our bodies are mostly water, and this whole planet really is mostly water.
True.
So tell us more from the Dolphin Dream, and you have this in your own artwork, your flow.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, so water, like you say, most of our body, I want to say 75, maybe more than that, 80% of our body is water. Maybe it's more than that. And so the feature, I should say the salient feature, is
the salient feature
is that these buildings all float. And that's the important thing, is that they have a hull, like a boat. So the hull of the building floats in water.
And is that where, if it's going to be built, say, in a Florida or in another setting versus a mountainous setting?
They can float in a mountain.
Really?
They can float in a mountainous setting, because how they float is in a water jacket. So what is a water jacket? So sort of imagine a swimming pool, but shaped like the hull of a boat, and you fill it with water, and then you plunk the hull of this thing inside of it. So it can float on a mountaintop, it can float on a river, it can float in an ocean, it can float in a desert, it can float in any land situation. And the thing that I tell children, and I usually don't broadcast, is that it also is designed to float up in the air. Because,
wow.
Yeah, if need be. And Lee saw that the potential was there, that we might need to do that, because he invented all of this multiple years. He's been dead for 18 years, and he invented this years before the words climate change were in our culture. And so this was not necessarily designed for, quote, climate change, but what this is the most elegant solution for humanity to live in comfort and safety during climate change. These buildings can be produced as single-family dwellings, an eco-arc, and my vision statement for the company, for Ecotexture, is an eco-arc for every family, because Henry Ford, when he invented the Ford, said a Ford in every garage, a car in every garage. And I say an eco-arc for every family, because every family on Earth can live in safety and comfort, all 8 billion of us. And that's true if we just switch to start designing and building in this manner. It requires a paradigm shift. Right now in America, we have to jump through hoops to do the littlest of parts of this for anything. For example, Heather, you were talking about front yard gardening, putting in a vegetable garden in your front yard. There was a case a few years ago in Orlando where a family put a vegetable garden in their front yard, and they got tagged, and they went to court.
Yep.
And they went to court, and they actually won.
Yep.
Because it's even illegal to put a vegetable garden in your front yard. So in America, there are things that we must change, and that has to do with our policy.
Right.
A lot of the policies that our government officials are making. I've put together a proposal, I was telling Heather, for Lake Worth Beach, which is the community where I live, which is to take out all the parking, take out all the cars in Lake Worth, and put a water park where the parking lot is at the beach, and transfer the parking to off-site, and have a gondola, think ski lift, to the beach, so that you get all of the cars away from the beach. Right now, you sit at any beautiful beach in America and you hear motorcycles and cars going by. Why? There's no need for this. You can move all of that noise off-site, and you can have a beautiful beach environment. So I've designed those kind of things for our communities. But the main thing is to get the awareness about how to build these structures, these environmentally sustainable structures. I didn't finish telling you what all the features, the salient features.
Well, let me just we'll circle back, and again, this is so very rich, and all of this information can be found on your assorted websites
on
as
ecotexture.com.
well.
And the Dolphin Dream.
And the Dolphin Dream. What I wanted to tap into at kind of briefly at this point is so much is getting urbanized, which is fine, but are there conversations about how to at least implement some of these things? You had mentioned about materials, but are there some builders that are thinking how to do what you're describing in apartments or in condos or in office buildings?
There are.
Or at least in increments.
Yes, there are, especially in Europe, especially in Holland, especially in Germany, especially in non-American places. And yes, there are. And unfortunately, like I say, the building codes and all of the restrictions imposed upon us by code in our country makes it difficult to get around that. But there are places here where we can do this, and where we can get around those kind of code restrictions. This, like I say, requires a paradigm shift. And my husband used to say that people talked to him in the 1970s when there was a gas crisis. Now, this was in the late 70s. Everybody was freaking out because they thought that there wasn't enough oil. And so that propelled his career to very large degree because of the fact that everybody wanted to build a home that didn't use fossil fuels.
And there was a change in the cars that went smaller. And so there was a huge paradigm shift for that time. And interest rates were 16% and
higher,
and even higher. So we are in a re-evolutionary time. And this is why this work, that his vision and Bucky Fuller started, it's all very quantum, and it does go back to nature, and it can feel like a difficult time, but there's always hope. And it's about the humanity, like you were saying, that's really what drew Lee, is that notion of it goes to the human, it goes to the heart. That's where this show is always about, to the heart of what's really pulsating. And if it's a tree or a home, has the heartbeat.
It's true.
It has a heartbeat.
It does. And when you go inside of a Lee Butler home, when you go into an Ekosea home, his first evolution, the first homes, and it's hard to find them. And so as a result of which, but if you go into one, you feel it. You feel you're in this living environment because the homes breathe. They all breathe. All of Lee's homes have air circulation, and they have in their homes. And they not only have air circulation, they have a greenhouse, so there's plants living inside the home. Some of them are made out of trees themselves. But I know we have to go. So
we do for now, and again, we'll the continuation, because we can get into chapters 4, 5, and 6.
I look forward to that.
You have, the rainbow of possibilities, the vision of your husband. You're writing a screenplay about your love story. We will continue and continue and continue again.
Yay.
So for right now, everybody, just know, again, tap into your heart. Look up some of these resources for Jill. Her art, her vision. If you are interested in the gardening and what is possible for your own home, perhaps, of making even a simple change, of adding some green and just having that kind of a joy.
Thank you.
Reach out. So, Jill, where can people find you?
At thedolphindream.com and ecotexture.com. And ecotexture is spelt with a K, but it's also part of the Dolphin Dream website. And all of that will be much more fluid in the beginning of the year, but it's there. You can see it all right now.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Thank you so much, Heather.
Oh,
Thank you.
This
again,
has been Jill.
So much fun.
I love that you brought props, and folks, we are going on YouTube, so you'll be able to see the things that we were talking about. And Jill, once again, thank you for coming.
Thank you so much for having me.
And thanks everybody for listening. Please like, review, and share this show. And if you'd like to be part of the conversations, please reach out to any of us here and at Lasting Conversations podcast at lastingconversations.com. Follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and give us a call. Thanks for listening, everybody. This is Lasting Conversations. We get to the heart of everything.